Welcome to the Lady Up America podcast. I'm Diane Canada. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for choosing to tune in today. Ladies, for those of you who may be listening and not watching, I'm in my pearls today. I'm in my little lace jacket, and I am making a statement today. I am pushing back today on this culture of idolizing sexuality in women. You know, and we're going to, as we have conversations with different women in our lives, our neighbors, our daughters, our nieces, you know, we're going to be up against this topic a lot. So I think it's important for us to kind of, you know, establish our stance on it. How do we feel about this? And how do we engage in conversation around it? So I want to talk about it today. You know, I think that so much of the cultural norms in our day today would have absolutely been pearl clutch worthy, you know, when we were growing up. Things that just now are widely accepted. Like, for instance, I was listening to one of my friends talking on social media about how she took her boys to the pool, and laying around her were these girls with thongs on, with their, you know, their hind ends just fully exposed. And her little boy looked at her and said, "Mommy, how come I can see her butt cheeks?" You know? And the mom's like, "How do I respond to that? What do I say?" You know, and again, so many young girls that think that their power is in their sexuality. Well, I'm pushing back on that today. I'm going to debunk that in every way that I can. And I am not saying that women should always be in pearls, although I would love to see that. I love the movie The Notebook. I loved Allie's wardrobe in that. I just thought the creativity and fashion in those time periods where the women were just so classy. I would love to see a return to that in our society. I truly would. But I understand that we've got so many girls now that are so detached from that kind of image. Like and this is what we have to start getting good at, on how to win them back to modesty and to self-respect and dignity and all of these things. So I'm going to get into it pretty heavy in our Tea Time Cafe today, which is on the other side of our news headlines with Steve Gill. It's important we take that segment and really understand what's going on in the world and how to talk about current events. But then I also want to zero in on this topic too. So come with me. Before we dive in, I want to ask a favor, if you would. I hate to do it, but it's just the way we have to do it as media people. I'm going to ask you if you would please subscribe or like the podcast. If you do like it, don't like it if you don't. But if you want to check in and just say, "Hey, yep, I'm going to give it a thumbs up and I'm going to subscribe," that helps to tell the algorithm to present this episode to more people just like you. So obviously this is a message that I would love to go far and wide. And I know I'm going to get some haters on it too, and that's okay, you know, but it's important. We need to talk about it because it's so rampant in our society, especially in summertime right now. We're all encountering it. So let's talk about it. All right. I'll be right back with Steve Gill.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. Just lay it up, lay it up, lay it up. Sidewalks are for bicycles, not for angry moms. Our children will know peace again, 'cause we're on the job. Yeah, lady. We're fired up and we're ready, so give us a little room. Get up. Our faith don't move that mountain now, just watch it move. Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. No. Just lady up, lady up, lady up.
All right, ladies, welcome back. Time to sit down with our good friend, Steve Gill. We're going to go over the news headlines, and then we're going to break them down from a biblical perspective. Why do we do this on this show? It's important because as we're having conversations, these tough conversations with neighbors, friends, and family, these things are going to come up, and I want you to be prepared. I want you to know how to navigate them and to be able to pull that biblical context out in these conversations. So we are so blessed here on this show because we have Steve Gill, who is the founding editor at Tristar Daily.com. But he not only brings the news headlines, but he brings so much perspective. He has served in the White House. He has been on syndicated radio for many years, and he also does international television commentary on political topics. So very well-rounded perspective, and we are really, like I said, really blessed to have him come and give us his wisdom on these top issues. So please welcome to the show, Steve Gill. Hey, Steve. We had a little break in Steve's audio here, but he was saying that he was happy to be here and saying hello to all of you ladies. All right, let's dive right into the conversation.
What we want to try to do here is help people be well informed on what they need to know and do know, and what they know that's just wrong, so that we can bring truth to help illustrate the differences between what people think they know and what the reality is. So I think that's important, whether it's in politics, whether it's in faith, whether it's in business. You've got to be able to discern between the known, the unknown, and what you know that's just wrong.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And just kind of extracting the important points out of it. Women are busy. We're all running in 1,000 directions. And so like, what do I need to know? What are the cliff notes and why does it matter? And how do I talk about it? And you just help us so much to do that. I don't know how you keep up with the news. God bless you. I will say this, that I have noticed that I'm not watching it near as much because I'm so dependent on you. Like I get the alerts from Tristar Daily, or I get texts from you. Hey, did you see this is going on? So I've been a little bit lazy in my news, exploration, thanks to you.
Well, I think two things to always underline. One, remember that the politicians work for us. We don't work for them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you run up to them and say, I'm your boss, you work for me. I think it's just you have the opportunity, particularly during primaries and general elections, to hire and fire, just like a good boss would do with employees who are not listening, who are not getting the job done, or not producing results. So we need to remember that they work for us, and that it is our job to sometimes treat them like dogs. I don't mean that in a euphemistic way, but if you've got a dog that behaves well, you pat them on the head, you give them attaboys. If they behave badly, you pull out your newspaper and whack them on the butt. And between those two treatments, they tend to do better. Politicians are exactly the same. Sometimes they need some paper whacking, but sometimes when they do right, you need to also reach out and say, hey, good job. I appreciate that. Thank you, because that's going to pull them more in the right direction, even in most cases, than a little paper whacking.
I love that. I mean, maybe we need to start carrying some rolled up newspaper with us when we go to events and stuff. I always want to have tremendous respect for people who are in elected office. We've got a lot of really good people. Yes, we've got people who are corrupt, of course. Anytime you've got that element of power and money and prestige, all that, yes, we're going to have corruption. But I would say we've got a lot of really, really good people that God has placed in those roles. So we want to be respectful. And I think just a simple thank you, because that is an impossible job. Just, I can't even imagine all the people pulling and tugging at them all day long, and all the demands and just the expectation. It's real. I mean, I ran for office. I didn't actually get into the office, but just seeing it on the campaign trail, I was so overwhelmed. So I can't imagine being in the office.
Well, and keep in mind that some of the things we really try to do with Tristar Daily is highlight the policy differences, the political differences, not really in all cases the personality differences. I mean, the Republicans that we are all under the same umbrella with, for the most part, have some basic core principles, and we might disagree on an issue from time to time.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're evil, doesn't mean they've been bought off, doesn't mean they're corrupt. Sometimes you can reach different conclusions with the facts. You want to make sure you're getting the same facts and not running off half-cocked. But just because somebody in the Republican umbrella is with you 90% of the time doesn't mean they're the enemy. As I've taught at Belmont as an adjunct professor, as I've been involved in education over the years, 90% in most cases is an A. So let's not treat, politicians that may disagree with us on a particular issue here or there, as long as it's not some violation of a core biblical principle, as the enemy. We do have enemies.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are promoting transgender surgeries for young kids, putting boys in girls' locker room, pushing against America on every issue that comes along.
Yeah.
We do have enemies, but those under our same umbrella that we disagree with from time to time on policy disputes are our allies, not our enemies. And maybe we need to work to pull them a little closer to that 99%, but not push them away simply because we disagree on an issue from time to time.
I agree. I heard, I've said this before on this show, but maybe for a new listener, Lisa Bevere had a great comment. She said, call them up, don't call them out. I see so many people, I'm going to call that out. I'm calling them out. How about call them up first? Call them up and say, just get the whole story. You can call your politicians, by the way. You can call them. They want to hear from you. And just get the whole story before you make a judgment on it. And again, like you said, if it's a direct violation of a biblical principle, that's where we have to draw the line. That's the red line. But apart from that, I'll see so many people that'll just be like, well, I'm not voting for them because they did this. It's like 90% of
And
the other
again,
stuff.
it may be the known, the unknown, and is just wrong.
Yes.
Again, what you're assessing them on, because you may not have the full picture, you may not have the full details of what justified their vote, or their concern about what Democrats may have attached to the legislation that had them vote no, because it had been confiscated from the initial purpose to be taken down the wrong path. So make sure you know not only the truth, but when you're wrong about what you know. And again, I think you've got to look at the fact that we have become such a confrontational society culturally, because so much of what we're doing online is being able to say things to people anonymously, or that we would never say to their face. And I think it has made us more coarse. It has made us more unwilling to be kind or honest in dealing with others, because, I'm behind my keyboard, I can say stuff that I would never say in person, in part because they would punch me in the nose. So let's start dealing with people like we are dealing with them, in a personal way, in a direct way, not hiding behind our keyboard and launching attacks that in many cases are not verified, not true, or just are absolutely wrong, both in facts and in approach.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing at Tristar Daily, because you do give us the facts. What are the top 3 headlines that you would say on Tristar this week? What's going on?
I think, in Tennessee, for example, we're starting to see TV commercials roll out from candidates for Congress and governor and everything else. So you're seeing us head into that final, 6-week push until early voting starts on July 17th, and then the August 6th primary. So you're going to see an absolute avalanche of TV, radio, direct mail. And again, that's going to push, voters to know, or perhaps not know, the truth about both what the candidate's saying or about the attacks that they're launching. So again, as we say so often, that as Christians, we have to pray, discern, and vote. Don't just say a pox on all your houses, I'm just not going to vote because it's too confusing. It's our job to dig through the noise, the chaos, and figure out the truth. And hopefully people can find a lot of that at Tristar Daily. You're also seeing a push by some to try and move their numbers up, as they're going to be in the field doing polling in the next several days to decide what message works, both in terms of an issue-oriented message as well as an attack message. But you're going to see a lot of polling going on to determine how they spend their money, what issues they focus on in the last several weeks, based upon the polling that they're doing in the wake of some of their TV commercials. So that's the first thing. Pay attention to the ads, but be discerning in what you believe and what you read, certainly online. I think the second thing that I would point to is how amazing it's been with all the World Cup guests from all over the world, and what they've seen of America, that we, and perhaps those in our country that hate America, at least at some level, they're seeing America in a better light than so many of our citizens do. I mean, you've got folks that are absolutely amazed at Buc-ee's, at Bass Pro Shops, at Walmart, at Costco, at Waffle House at 1:00 in the morning. They are embracing America. The fact that we have ice machines, the fact that we have air conditioning in these big Buc-ee's facilities, they're seeing the best of America, not just in the stuff we have, but the way people are treating them. So much of Europe, it's been portrayed of, America's xenophobic, they hate foreigners. And yet you've got these people who are coming into our communities throughout the U.S. who are being embraced, who are being treated like guests, who are being welcomed. And I think that these Europeans, as they're blogging and posting, there's this one guy from Germany, Freddie, who had about 10,000 followers when he first came here. He's been traveling all over the U.S. being welcomed. I think he has like 1 million followers now, as he's been sharing his impressions and others. In Nashville, the Japanese soccer team is housed here, is training here before they go and play their World Cup games. They're being embraced. And by the way, Senator Bill Hagerty, former ambassador to Japan, was a key factor in them locating here and doing a lot of their training at Montgomery Bell Academy, where a couple of his sons went to school. So the international connection here in Nashville has been advanced in part by Senator Bill Hagerty's connection to the Japanese, the people and their government. So I think we're seeing all these foreign folks come in and maybe teach us some lessons as you watch the Scots in Boston go to a Boston Red Sox game where they're singing Scottish songs with the whole crowd joining in, where you see the Netherlands team and their fans, doing their pregame preparation, singing and dancing. Hey, us Southeastern Conference fans, we can learn something about pre-gaming from our World Cup guest over the next couple of weeks as well. And then I think the third thing that I would highlight is what we learned Tuesday morning, that the FBI has been able to interdict a terror attack that was planned for the UFC fight on the White House lawn, celebrating the 250th anniversary, celebrating President Trump's 80th birthday. Apparently, there was a plot to use drones to attack the surrounding area, drive people out with a stampede, and then pick them off with sniper rifles. At least 5 have already been taken into custody. There may be 23, 25 others already that they're identifying. We need to follow the people, follow the money, and determine how much more there is to this. But it also highlights the fact that we've got to be more attuned to our security. We've seen in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, we've seen in the Iran conflict, how drones just in the last couple of years have become so weaponized in those conflicts. Now, in those areas, they're using, sophisticated jamming devices to try and interrupt the ability of those drones to cause harm and chaos. We need to recognize what we need to be doing here, technology-wise, to protect large venues, protect large gatherings in the same way. And I guarantee you, Diane, our intelligence communities, our technology communities, our national security communities are working 24/7 to make sure we can dispatch the same kind of protective devices and technology that are being used in those war zones, because we are vulnerable to the sort of terror attacks that apparently was disrupted targeting the UFC fight on the White House lawn.
Steve, I wonder if a lot of women are reluctant to go into gatherings now with lots and lots of people. I've been reluctant. I've been a little reluctant to go to a big football game or to go to a big festival or something. And I wonder if a lot of other women are feeling that. Like, what would be your advice to us?
I would say first, I would say 3 things. First, we cannot live in fear.
Yeah.
I mean, life is a risk. And again, we calculate that risk, and the risk at these large gatherings that take place are kind of like flying on an airplane. There is a chance that a plane will crash, but you're at greater risk driving to the airport than you are once you board the plane. I think at these major events, your risk of being hurt, injured, or killed driving there is a more major risk than something happening at these big events. Yeah. The second, I would say what I've told my sons for a long time: keep your head on a swivel. Be aware, watch your surroundings, and see what you see, whether you're at a restaurant, whether you're at a big gathering, whether you're walking in a part of town you're not used to. Have your head on a swivel. Just be aware. We're sometimes so captivated by what's on our cell phone, what TikTok we might miss, what text we might miss, that we're not actually paying attention as we're walking or going through life. So pay attention to what's going on. And then third, and perhaps most importantly, trust your instincts. If things just don't feel right, if the hairs on the back of your neck start, kind of rising, it just feels off. Pay attention to that. And again, the military, was doing studies for a few years during some of our conflicts of, lieutenants or captains that would be leading a patrol that would just decide, something doesn't feel right down that alley. And they would divert. And it turned out that there was an IED, a bomb that was waiting down there. And whether it was just the birds weren't chirping, the kids weren't playing soccer, whatever it was, they had an instinct that was better than those others. So they focused on, okay, how do we train that? How do we teach instinct? We all have it. Ultimately, we're all part of the animal kingdom, and trust those animalistic instincts that if something doesn't feel right, we may be seeing something we don't recognize, we may be hearing something we don't even recognize, but trust those instincts. And if things feel off, trust your instincts. Yeah.
I could say a lot about that. I think main thing too is pairing that with the fact that those of us Christians have the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will also guide us and direct us. I love in the Bible when he says he will tell you whether to turn left or to turn right. And that's so true. It's another reason just to make sure we're really clung to our Bible in these last days and in this really tough culture we're in. Something that I'd like.
I would say, by the way, as a Christian and as a conservative and as a Republican, the Bible also tells us don't ever turn left. Always go to the right, because that is the right side.
Always. Of
Maybe
course.
that's a misapplication of biblical text, but
I
I
think
think
so.
it's pretty accurate.
Nice try, though. That was good. So, okay, I want to ask your opinion on this, the Iran deal that Trump he's working on. I don't think it's actually going to be signed for a couple more days, but he's talking about, pulling out of that region now with our military. And I mean, Trump is not an idiot. So how is he really thinking this is going to go? Like, do you think this is just a ploy? Like, we know they're not going to get rid of their uranium. We know they're not going to abide by this deal. Trump's got to know that better than anybody. So what do you think, again, is really going on? For those who may not have heard about it yet, maybe just give them a quick up to speed on the deal that was done, and then what the deal involves, and then whether or not you think Trump's just playing this out with some other.
Well, first of all, I've appeared on a lot of international media in the last few days. We don't know what the deal is. What is being reported internationally and by our media here is what the Iranian media is saying the deal is. Keep in mind, in some of the earlier negotiations when Pakistan was mediating, they had one in Farsi and one in English, and they were reporting what was in the Farsi version that it was being agreed, when the English version was entirely different. What we are hearing right now is not what the deal is. It's what the Iranians are saying it is. And you've got the mainstream media in the U.S. rushing off saying, well, Trump has agreed to this, Trump has agreed to that. That's not true. Okay. President Trump understands, as Ronald Reagan told us, trust but verify. Yeah. Let's wait till we see the deal so we can verify what's actually in the terms, what's actually contained in it, and what are the triggers that they don't get a release of the sanctions. They don't get a release of some of their funds unless or until they do what they have promised to do. Once they deliver, which would be rare and amazing from the Iranians who've lied for decades, once they do what they say they will do, we will release some of their funds to them, but limiting it so they can't immediately put that in the hands of their terror proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis. So, we do not have idiots running this. They are smart enough to know you can't trust the Iranians. Their uranium dust is under hundreds of meters of rock from the bombings that we've done. They don't have the capacity to get it. The only people who have the technological capacity to get to it are us, maybe the Chinese, maybe the Russians. So as long as it's encased in rubble, it's not as big a danger, but we need to make sure we remove it, and that's going to be part of the deal. I've talked with a few folks who are privy to what the actual terms that will be signed later this week, and what the Iranians are saying is simply not true, even though you've got European media, you've got the international media, and many in the U.S. that are rushing to say, oh, this is what the deal is, and it's bad. Let's wait till we see the details. I've negotiated a lot of contracts and terms. The devil's always in the details. Let's see what the actual deal says before we run off half-cocked. Like we talked earlier, there's the known, there's the unknown, there's what you know that's just wrong. And what the media is reporting right now is just wrong because it's coming from the propagandist media of Iran, who are under the control of the Iranian Republican Guard. If they don't say what they want them to say, they get killed. So what you're getting from the journalism in Iran is simply more of the propaganda coming from Iran. Okay, so I have 3 questions for you then on this. Number 1, why isn't the deal public? Is Trump just is he just withholding some of the details of it? And that's why we don't know what's in it. So that's my first question. Second is, what does this money come from? Like when we say we're going to release their money, these billions of dollars, certainly that's not taxpayer money coming to them. So where does that money come from? And then my last question would be, you've said several times on this show how the IRGC is actually the ones running Iran, and then the leadership is sort of the face of it, but they're diabolically opposed to what they're going to agree on. So is it the leadership that's signing this deal, or is it them agreeing to it? Because I can't imagine that would be the case. 3 great questions. First, what you have right now is the terms, particularly some of the details, still being ironed out. So President Trump's not wanting to release a partial deal that may conflict and may derail it. So they're waiting till the last final details are done. Again, the devil's in the details, and in any contract negotiation, you dealt with it when you were in the music industry. It's that last 5% where the hardest issues are finally negotiated. So some of the timing of, how do we release some of their funds? I'm going to talk about that in a moment. What's the timing of us verifying that and having access of inspectors to guarantee they are not continuing to move forward with enriched uranium after this deal is struck, or even, as President Trump has pointed out, even if they agree not to develop enriched uranium that has weaponized capacity, that they won't go buy it from countries like Pakistan or others that have access to nuclear kinds of weaponized material. So, let's wait till the details are finally negotiated, and by Friday that should be done, and we should have a deal. You also have the Strait of Hormuz that has been under threat from Iran for decades, just because they haven't been closing it down until they started firing missiles into the strait, declaring that there had to be a toll. They've always had that threat. They've been the bully of the region, which is why you're seeing, Oman and Bahrain and Qatar and Kuwait and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. There's been a coalescing of these Gulf states on the side of the U.S. that is going to bear even greater fruit going ahead in terms of the result of this conflict. That's not getting a lot of attention, but the move forward with allies in that region more strongly allied with the U.S. and maybe even in Iran, recognizing that, okay, our animosity towards the U.S., towards Israel, and towards our neighbors is not working for us. So I think we're going to see kind of a reshifting of balance in that region that is a byproduct of this, that again, the mainstream media is not talking about. Second, where does the money come from? We have frozen assets, and many of these assets of Iran are in banks in these Gulf states. Their assets, billions of dollars, have been frozen because of the U.S. sanctions, because of the embargo, because of the countries there cooperating to say we're not going to keep providing money to Iran when the U.S. has said, don't do that, or we're going to put you under sanctions. So that is their money that is in many of these banks in the regions. It is money that to some extent we have embargoed as well, hundreds of billions of dollars. So it is their money that ultimately may be released to them if they do what they promised to do and don't, continue some of the bad behavior that has gotten us where we are for 47 years. Keep in mind also that they are not going to get $300 billion in reconstruction from the U.S. The Gulf states who have their money are talking about providing reconstruction, but not just, okay, that building got bombed, we're going to rebuild it, but rebuilding the infrastructure and creating an Iran that benefits the Iranian people with economic prosperity that they should be benefiting from based on the oil revenues they have and based upon building something other than missiles and bombs and fighter aircraft and naval vessels that they use to threaten their neighbors. So where is this $300 billion from the Gulf states going to be spent? That's, again, part of the details that have to be worked out. What is the timeline of doing it that is not just, okay, here's your check like Barack Obama did with $1.7 billion in cash that was then dispensed to these terrorist groups. So, and then I think the third issue is where do we go from here? Do you trust that President Trump and his team know what they're doing? Are we going to continue to keep a strong eye on whether or not they do what they promised to do? Or are we just going to let them go willy-nilly back into threatening their neighbors, threatening Israel, threatening the U.S.? Now, keep in mind that the Gulf states did not like the Obama structured deal. They are embracing this one because they see that the threats that Iran has imposed on them for decades are now being removed, that there's going to be a leash on Iran that protects them, protects Israel, protects our interest as well. And we're not going to be withdrawing our presence in the region. In fact, these countries are wanting us to be more involved because they see us as their protector from still the threat that you have from Iran. And then finally, the Republican Guard, the IRGC, they are still going to be trying to cause trouble. But there are reports from Iran that they're starting to shoot at each other, different IRGC elements shooting at IRGC elements. They're fighting for power. So the leadership in Iran is going to be looking for a path forward that will restrict the IRGC from continuing to stir up trouble. That doesn't mean that some IRGC unit that has a missile and fires it into the Strait of Hormuz won't immediately have us strike them as a defensive posture. They are being degraded. Their weapons capability, their leadership is being degraded. Every time they fire a missile, they get killed and that missile battery gets wiped out. So they're losing power while the more reasonable elements in Iran, it appears, will be gaining power. But again, we go back to Ronald Reagan. trust but verify.
Yeah.
Make sure that perhaps for the first time ever, they do what they say they're going to do so we can put this conflict at an end. We're already seeing oil start to flow again. It's going to take a while for that to catch up. It's going to take a while for some of that oil to be converted from airline fuel to gasoline. But you're already seeing gas prices come down. And I think in the next couple of months, we'll be back to the kind of pre-war, less than $3, somewhere in the mid twos, that as we head into the midterms are really going to fuel a boom in the economy here in the U.S.
Okay, well, that's all good news. I had heard that the Gulf states around there were interested in some kind of a canal, building some kind of a canal so that Strait of Hormuz would no longer be able to be held hostage, by Iran. So that's something I'm curious about. And then, so what I'm hearing you say about the money then is that's their profit, basically. That's their revenue. It's not something that the United States is giving them.
No, it's their money that was deposited in many cases in those Gulf state banks, in Kuwait, in Qatar, in Oman, that they're talking about releasing with our approval if Iran keeps their word, follows kind of the timeline of step by step. Okay, you do this, we release this much. You do this, we release this much. But also tracking it to make sure they don't take that cash and immediately provide it to fund their terror proxies, again, like the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and continue to use that to attack their neighbors, both in Israel and beyond. I think the other piece, and again, this is important for people to understand, that this is complicated. If it was easy, over the last 47 years, we would have solved it.
Mm-hmm.
But you are seeing, again, the move towards better relations, even between Lebanon and Israel, communicating, talking to each other, things that would not have happened before. The Saudis have looked and are moving forward on developing a pipeline that does allow oil to move outside of these slow moving transit ships through the straits that continue to be at risk from both terror attacks or, again, a rogue IRGC missile being fired. And the other piece that has slowed traffic through the strait is the insurance companies that are still dominated out of London saying we're not going to provide insurance coverage for ships that traverse through that conflicted territory. That's had as much to do with stopping the flow of ships and oil as anything, because if they're not insured, they don't want to move these big tankers loaded with oil. If that sinks, they're just lost. So the insurance companies in England have been a major problem as well. And I think there are efforts to figure out how do we bypass that moving forward, in addition to a pipeline that bypasses going through that, international water, being subject to Iran or anybody else saying, oh, we're going to charge you a toll, we're going to charge you a fee to go through here. I think they all want to bypass any threat from Iran based upon the history that they've had to experience over the last, 47 years.
Wow. And you can't blame them. You can't blame the insurance companies for being scared of that. Can't blame them a bit. Wow. Yeah, it is so complicated. Again, there's so many layers to this that you really help us understand and break down. And we're really grateful, really grateful. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I would just say, keep watching these World Cup games, and more importantly, the fans in the stands who are embracing America, embracing our culture in a way that the media in Europe has not shown them or even shown us how much others recognize the greatness of America. As we're celebrating our 250th year, maybe it's time to take a pause and recognize that all the naysayers and doomsayers and woe is me folks on the left and in the leftist media that quit downplaying the uniqueness that is special about America. Doesn't mean we're perfect, but when you compare us to every other nation, the freedoms we have, the prosperity we have that reaches from top to bottom, the poorest in our country are still living better with air conditioning and more opportunity than people in the rest of the world in so-called advanced countries. So let's recognize not only what problems we may have that need to be addressed, but also the fact that this is still the unique, most free, most prosperous nation in the world, and we need to recognize what makes us special as we celebrate our first 250th years. Yeah,
couldn't agree more. Amen. Ladies, please go to tristardaily.com. Get all of your news from Steve Gill. We can trust Steve Gill. We can trust him. Steve, thank you so much. Appreciate you, and we will see you back next week.
Thanks. Have a great week.
All right. All right, ladies, let's dive in now into our Tea Time Cafe. Pour yourself a nice hot cup of tea. I hope you'll do that with me. Pause the video if you need to and go do that. come back and let's just take some time for ourselves to settle down all the noise, get quiet, just get some time together and explore this a little deeper. Cheers. Okay, I want to dive into this idea of the clutching of the pearls and decorum, modesty, what God considers beautiful in a woman versus what society deems beautiful. I mean, we are eat up in our society with the narrative that sexuality is our power, that it's like our superpower as women. And obviously we know that in the Bible, one of the most detestable things to God is sexual immorality. And we know that with Satan, the real enemy here behind all of this, that everything in his arsenal has to do with sexuality, sexual perversion, the destroying of God's temple, which is our bodies. Now, after Christ rose, the idea of creation, so we have, obviously when we engage in sexual relations, then children can be born to that. So now we have this alarming rate of abortion in our country. So everything that has to do with this narrative about convincing girls that their superpower is their sexuality, we know that is straight from the pit of hell. And I want to tell you, I fell into it for a while. Probably a lot of you watching did too. If we're just going to be honest, one thing you can count on me for these days is vulnerability and honesty. I'm just like out with it anymore. Because my life has been transformed and because I'm healed of all of that now, I can go back and talk with authority on it because I've lived it. So in the early 90s and all, I was very much in the music industry. I was very promiscuous. I'm not proud of that. I'm not glorifying it or romanticizing it at all. It was really wrong. Like that lifestyle was absolutely wrong. But at the time, I thought that's just what everybody did. I fell into those cultural narratives and into this cultural acceptance of all of this and thought that I was progressive, thought that I was, a woman of the 90s. Oh my gosh, it's so silly. There's nothing progressive about sexual advancement, all this sexual encroachment in our society. That's not progressive. It's regressive. It only leads to one place. Can you say Sodom and Gomorrah? Can you say Babylon? We see where it ends up, but we buy these narratives because we don't understand the alternative is better. We really don't get it. I didn't get it for so long. So anyway, let's just dive into it. I got a lot to say on this today, but let's go to the Bible first. I'm in Proverbs 31 and I'm in verse 10. And this is talking about a woman who fears the Lord. This is what's beautiful in God's eyes. It says, an excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She's like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it's yet night, provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, and with the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She's not afraid of snow for her household, for all her households are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands and let her works praise her in the gates. Okay. Beautiful, right? It's just beautiful. The things that God considers honorable and beautiful are like almost a stark contrast to what our society these days tells us is beautiful and honorable. So I wanted to find out the origin behind this idea of the clutching of the pearls. So I looked it up, and basically what I discovered is that women who did have dignity, self-respect, who were respectable women in the 1900s, when they started seeing women who were falling prey to Satan's traps, which, started around then, things that would upset them, or they would start to notice that women were doing very inappropriate things to be more quote unquote progressive, they would clutch their pearls in kind of this shock and awe. I couldn't believe a woman would do that. It was so out of character, so out of the norm of their culture at the time for women to be caught in these scandals, or women to be dressing more scantily and all that. And, I've watched a lot of these, period pieces like Downton Abbey, and a lot of these where, a lot of this traditionalism started getting relaxed and women started feeling more free and to dress in this fashion that was more flattering to their body. I mean, I get it. Like, I understand how all of that started to happen, and women started to feel less confined and more free to express themselves. Like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it is when it starts to cross over into what you're trying to attract into your life. That's where we get into the muddy water. Because as women start to become more loose in their clothing and all that, then depending on what they choose to wear, that makes them appear more loose to men, right? And that signal that we're sending by what we're wearing, I mean, it definitely is a signal, right? We're telling the guys what we're advertising. We're attracting certain men. My husband put it this way this morning. We were talking about it. And he said, when you set cheese in a trap, you're attracting a rat, right? So don't be surprised when the rat bites that cheese, right? You invited a rat into your life. And don't be surprised now when he's tired of your cheese, or when you run out of cheese, he's going to go look for cheese somewhere else. And one of the things I always say to women right now when I'm arguing about this is, if this sexual empowerment and all this is it truly is empowering to you, and it's just an anything goes, and you don't mind if your guy is, sleeping with this one, that one, the other, if it's just all like open season on, sexuality, then why are there so many songs still that are so popular around cheating? How can both things be true at the same? Like, you're attracting these guys who are only coming to you because they're sexually turned on by you or attracted to you, right? That's what their motivation is. Then don't think you're the only woman that can turn them on. Anybody else can do it too. If that's what they're chasing, then that's what they're going to go find. So we shouldn't be shocked. But if you're trying to attract a man who cares about the things God cares about, the inner beauty, I mean, you can be beautiful on the outside too. I'm not saying you have to look like, a plain, like you can definitely dress in beautiful clothing and all, but you're just not advertising. You're not sending that same signal. And I was raised to believe that, when you leave something to the imagination, when you dress more modestly, when you show that you respect yourself by the way that you dress, you attract a much higher quality man. And I have found that to be true many, 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 many times now. When I put out cheese, I attracted rats. It's just the way it works. When I stopped doing that, when I decided I don't want any more rats. I want a quality man. I want somebody who's attracted to what God's attracted to. Somebody that thinks what's beautiful is what God thinks is beautiful. Then I got a wonderful, wonderful man who settles down my anxieties, who does not give me reason to be suspicious, who would never consider looking at another woman. You know what my husband even did? I had a friend of mine who lived near me, and he was looking for me one day. He went she lived basically next door, and he went over to see if I was there. And when she answered the door and I wasn't there, she's like, well, you can come in and wait for her if you want. And he's like, no, that's good. And he was not even going to let himself go into her house to risk even being alone with her for any kind, not even giving himself an opportunity for any scandal or any lie or anything to be said about spending time with her. So this is a quality man. So anyway, this clutching of the pearls thing, I wanted to figure out like how it got off the rails. Like why is that considered a bad thing now? Or and especially if a woman wears pearls, or if like, what is the stereotype now? How did that get to be so distorted? I mean, I wear pearls. I like them. I have always liked them. And I don't really care if they, what they say. I just think they're very feminine and show strength and they show beauty. And I mean, just think about how a pearl is made. You look at an oyster, right? The oyster, it's made by a lot of friction and rubbing on the inside of that oyster as it's fighting off things, right? And then it becomes this beautiful iridescent pearl. They're very valuable to find inside of an oyster. And when you think about what it signifies, where it kind of went off the rails was when we started having a lot of pop culture and movies and things like that, talking about, making fun of women who wanted to stick to traditional values and stick to biblical principles, how they were made fun of in society for just being so shocked and so exaggeratedly shocked over the scandals and the things going on in the culture. And so that's always what Satan does, right? He tries to make the bad look good and the good look bad. So the things that are going on that are detestable to God, the sexual perversion and immorality and all that, making it seem like that's the norm and we're the weird ones for having a problem with it. Let me tell you, again, I've gone both ways on this. I grew up, first part of my life, it was very strict. It was all about traditional family and all that. Then my dad walked out on us at 8 years old and my mom fell prey to the feminist movement and all that. She was hurting after the divorce. So she went wild for a while. And then the culture was changing, movies and television and all that stuff started basically pumping out a message to us girls growing up during that time that, gloves are off. Like it's, do what you want. If it feels good, do it. You don't need a man. I even heard one of my close friends' mom say, she's, what the heck do I need a man for? I know where to find one when I need one. I mean, that's the stuff that I heard growing up. So it just became normal to sort of see men as play toys and something that you don't really need, or if you do need them for a night or two, you know where to get them. And then you can sort of just toss them away after that. That's the messaging we got coming up as Gen Xers. And then we start coming into our adulthood, right? And I told you, like in the music industry, I mean, I worked at a club. I'll tell you this. I worked at a sport. It wasn't even a sports bar. It was a dance club, not a strip club. Okay. Not that, but it was like it was called the Pump Club. And so it was, a high end kind of club in Atlanta where big spenders, would come in to treat whoever they wanted to impress. And the waitresses there, we were expected to wear scantily, we were supposed to be scantily clothed. Sorry, I can't get that word out. And when we were not waiting on a table, we were expected to go to these big speakers that they had on the corners of the dance floor. We were supposed to get up there and dance. Again, not stripping. It was not stripping, but we were just supposed to get up there and dance a little bit and entertain the customers and then come down and go back to waiting our tables. And my aunt, of all people, is the one who recommended me for this job. Her best friend, Darlene, my mom, it was originally my mom's best friend, but my aunt knew her. She was living near her at the time. Her husband owned this club, and they got me a job there and made me think it was totally normal. And I remember I went in for my very first shift, and I had on it was summer, and I had on like a little white tank top and like I think it was Jacqueline Smith style summer pants. They were like blue and white flowers and stuff. And the manager sent me home. He said, what are you wearing? And I thought it would be cool because we had neon lights, like those, what are they called? The black lights in the club and stuff. So I thought the white would show up cool and everything. I said, well, I just picked this outfit up today to wear. And he said, you're not wearing that tonight. He said, go home and put on something sexy and then come back. I'm like, what? He said, yep, go home. He goes, you got 30 minutes to get home, get changed, and get back here and start your shift. I mean, so when I tell you, like, that was the narrative. That was the narrative it was so confusing. So So you just started falling into that. I would have, I could tell you so many stories. I could tell you stories about people I dated, the things that they would be into that they just thought were normal. That I was like, yeah, I'm not into that, and my friends would say, oh, Diane, don't be a prude. Everybody's into that these days, so it just became normalized. All of this sexual, just looseness, promiscuity, everything was just normalized. Well, now fast forward to when God gets a hold of me and he starts working on my heart, and I start getting convicted inside, because once the Holy Spirit enters you, then all these things that seemed okay before, all of a sudden they're not okay. And it's, again, confusing when you're trying to undo some of this messaging that you've been programmed with, and started learning more about what God says. Well, now he's, like I said, he's totally transformed my life since then. And now I look back on that girl that I was, and it's like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? But you just don't know better. You do better when you know better, right? We know better now. And I see even some women, that are my age, maybe even a little older, maybe a little younger, but they're still trying to dress in this real provocative way. And it's not about me judging them. Like I don't want this to come across as preachy or judgy. Okay. Because again, I was that girl. I did that stuff. What it is to me is it's just sad. It's sad because I wish I could go back and tell the younger version of myself that that's not the way. That it's sad. Like all these things that you're projecting by the way you're dressing, the things you're trying to attract are things that are going to further hurt you. You think it's empowering, but it's not. Is it fun to feel sexy? Yes. Is it fun to have attention from men? Okay, I'm not going to say that can't be fun for a young girl. Sure, that can be fun. But again, what you're trading for that is what makes it sad. That's what makes it sad. Because if you knew your real value and your real worth in God and what he values, you would never, ever, ever, ever put yourself in a position like that. So like I said, when I see people who do it now, it just makes me sad for them, because I know they don't know their worth. They don't know their value. Now they'll tell you they do. Girl, I know my value. Girl, I know what I'm worth. They'll say that stuff, but they don't mean, they have no idea what they're trading. Deep down in their midnight hour, they don't feel empowered. I promise you. I've been there. I've walked that out, and I've known way too many of my girlfriends who have too. And that is not you don't arrive at the place that you think you do by living out that kind of lifestyle. What every woman wants is to feel loved and adored, and to feel precious to someone, to feel protected, to feel special. That's what you're really wanting, to feel beautiful, to feel desired. These are the things that you want. And these are okay, because God put all of those desires in us. But the way you're trying to go about doing that, it's all the wrong way. You're never going to get what you really want from that pursuit, is what I'm trying to say. The pursuit of sexual, quote unquote, empowerment leads to heartbreak, leads to you feeling terrible about yourself. It leads to men cheating on you, right? Because they're rats. They're going to go to somebody else's cheese, right? It leaves you feeling like you constantly have to strive to be, to one up yourself, right? Especially as you start to age, you start doing crazy things to your body to try to stay beautiful by the world standards. I mean, there's a long, long list of dead ends that lifestyle leads to. Whereas if you do it God's way, then you become more and more and more beautiful to a good man, because of all of these things like we just went over, the things that he appreciates about you, the things that make you so beautiful because you're serving God, and that light that's in you just draws him. It's like you know what really counts, what's really important in life, the way you love people, that love that you've received from Christ, and now you're able to, and you're filled up on that, and you're able to pour that out on other people. That makes you beautiful. And so as you age and all of that, you become even more and more and more beautiful to the right people, to the people that value what God does. You don't worry about your guy cheating on you or God knows what in this day and time. These days with so much internet and television and all that, they can cheat on you and it doesn't even have to involve another person, if you know what I mean. You don't have to worry about stuff like that when you've got a godly man. You don't have a rat. You have a godly man. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with so many of us women who've learned this, who've learned even the hard way, who have experienced a lot of those heartbreaks and stuff from having rats in our life. I don't think there's anything wrong with us trying to now pour that wisdom out on the younger generation, or even, like I said, even friends who don't know their value and their worth, pouring this out on them and attracting them to God so that He can give them their worth and dignity and their identity, their true value in Him. This is part of our job as we lady up. We're going to encounter these people all the time. And the younger generation these days, God bless them, they've got to be just so confused. They're bombarded with sexual images and sexual temptation, and at younger and younger and younger ages. I mean, they're getting them in kindergarten and first grade now. The enemy is he's infiltrated the schools so much, all this perversion in these books and everything. He's getting them young. So we, as the church, especially as ladies in the church, like, this is part of what we can do to turn this tide and to actually point them toward someone who can give them real value, and how the world is void of it. And the narratives that they're getting are so empty. They're so just vile and despicable, and they lead nowhere. They lead to dead ends and brick walls. So it's really important for us. So we need to bring this decorum back. Like I was saying, the way that women used to dress, where they had beautiful, creative fashion ideas, but they were modest and they were intriguing and they were flattering to the female body, but not provocative. Like, I want to return to that. I want to return to class. And like I said, decorum, even in the way we behave, the words we choose, the way cussing, and, it's so unbecoming on a woman to have a foul mouth. Again, God certainly would not want that in His daughters. And we just, again, because it's so normalized in our society, we just think that it's okay. We just think it's okay to just drop these bombs. I'm not saying if you have a bad day and you drop one here or there, I'm not trying to condemn us for that. I'm just saying we should be convicted by the Holy Spirit. That's not something we should be known for. We watched, my husband and I watched this show called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Did you guys see that? We watched it so long, and then it started again to kind of get out there, and we had to quit watching it. But there's this Jewish woman in New York, and I think the time period, it takes place in the 60s, and she's this traditional mother, housewife, and she decides she wants to become a comedian. And so she starts, kind of taking these little, field trips out at night to start, doing some stand-up comedy in these clubs. And she eventually divorces, and she becomes a woman of the hour, kind of the woman of the 60s, the independent feminist, woman. And she gets into all this trouble. But this woman, Susie, becomes her manager, and she's just her mouth is just so foul and vile. And I'm not going to say, as we were watching this, it's been years ago now, but as we were watching it, it was funny at first. But again, then the Holy Spirit just sort of started convicting me about watching it. It's like, don't watch this. Don't be careful what we put in our ears and all too. But I don't want to normalize, even on a television show like that. I don't even want to find it funny, because it's just so offensive to the Lord. And I'm telling you, he's done a big work in me over the last few years. Things that I used to could watch and enjoy, I just can't do it anymore. I just can't. It's like, dang, things that everybody else is watching, I just can't do it anymore. I feel Him just removing me more and more and more from a lot of this cultural crap that has just been trashing our minds and trashing our hearts for God. I won't support it anymore. And a return to decorum would be so welcome. I'm starting to see some of that desire in the younger girls. I see a lot of them that are more attracted to that, to modesty, to not just letting it all hang out and letting anybody who wants it take it. Like, we need to have a more valuable image of ourselves. And I love seeing some of these younger girls starting to get that. I'll leave you with this story that I heard about a jeweler who had, all these display cases out, and, people would come in, very elite clientele would come in wanting to shop his jewelry counter because he was he was well known for having very valuable jewels in his store. And so these, high-end VIPs would come in and bring their wives in and all that, and they would shop for jewelry, right? But even among that most discerning clientele, there were a few that were like the VIPs of the VIPs, right? And for them, he would only let them see what he had in the back, right? What he had in the back in the safe that was his most prized jewels. Only for them would he bring that out and show them. He would, take it out of the velvet case, and he would show them and let them hold it and let them see how beautiful. And this is what I want us to get across as women. Like, our bodies are the temple of God. They're like those very super high-end valuable jewels, right? And you don't pull those out and show those to just anybody. That's only for the most VIP of VIPs in our lives. That's what it should be. That's how God intended it to be, for us to only pull that part of ourselves out for someone who deserves it, someone who's earned that right to see that part of ourselves. And I just would love for women to see themselves as those beautiful diamonds, those beautiful pearls, if you will, those beautiful high-end jewels that you don't just throw those before swine, right? It's a discerning person that says, no, I'm going to save myself. I'm going to save that valuable part of myself for someone who is deserving. And I don't think there's a thing in the world wrong with that. So it's okay for us to be sad for women who don't know their value. But the way that the culture has demonized that, or the way that they've made fun of that, I think we need to shake that off. And I think we need a few more pearl clutchers, people out there saying, this is not right. This is not okay. I can't believe you would be engaged in that. And not in a judgmental way, but in a loving way. Like, oh no, honey, like you're a valuable, valuable jewel. No, you don't throw yourself before just anybody. Let me explain to you how valuable you are. Let me explain to you how God created you and how God sees you. Don't throw your pearls before swine. Wait for the discerning man who's deserving, right? So this is kind of the message that we can send to the younger generation. I hope this has been helpful for you today. Parting words are just this. Let's remember that our bodies are the temple of God, and we need to show respect and honor and dignity in how we present our bodies to the world, because it's a reflection of Him. That's the biggest reason that we need to be aware of our behavior and how we dress, all of that, to honor Him. But also to remember that our value and our identity and our self-worth and all of that, our self-respect, all of that is also in Him. It's not in our sexuality, not by a long shot. All right, ladies, hope y'all have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you soon. Lady up.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down, just a little.